for women, it does seem like if you are undersexed and under orgasms, you think about it less, right? There's almost like this and I can't explain what the mechanism is, but we don't, when we're not getting it, we're not thinking about it the same way that maybe our male counterparts do. And when that happens, you know, we're going to get into like creative energy and, you know, womb power. And, you know, we're going to get an E on the side of this podcast, because we're going to use some words that maybe, you know, maybe our younger children or whatever, if you don't want them exposed to this conversation, we'll make sure to put that in the intro. But we're going to be talking about pussy power, and we're going to be talking about, you know, how we actually are the ultimate creatrixes, and when you can it can be a way that you can, when you're orgasming regularly, not only can it be, at least in my experience, it's a healing tool, but again, it's that way to call in the things that you want. So to not do it, because as women, we have the mechanism, if we're not getting it, we're not self-pleasing, or we don't have a partner or whatever, you think about it less and less. So it's even more important for women to be putting their sexual health and their pleasure and their bliss you know, first and foremost.
Yeah, I think making time for it, making it a priority, because otherwise it's like, it'd be a pretty sad and lonely and like less fun life if these things just weren't available to us at all. So it's like, let's utilize the gift that nature has given us. And we have this whole pharmacy of love and ecstasy and bliss and connection with the divine, all right inside of us. And, you know, just like in everything, you know, we've outsourced our energy to coffee. We've outsourced our sleep to melatonin. We've outsourced our, you know, social anxiety to alcohol. We've outsourced our creativity to THC. And we've even sort of like outsourced our sexuality to porn and to vibrators. And like, that might be a little inflammatory or confronting for people as well. But if you are, and look, I'm not here to judge anybody's pleasure. I'm not here to yuck anybody's yum. And I know that for myself, like I used to feel like I couldn't orgasm without vibrators. And it took me some time to really like make spaciousness for myself. I had to retrain my body, like a slow ascent. I had to retrain my body acceptance of where I am. I had to retrain my body, well, not retrain, but train my body how to work on energetic planes. And I'm so glad that I did, because then the range of what is possible, the range of what's available to you, the depth of the experience, and also the lingering impacts and benefits of the orgasm are much stronger. Like people would say to me, like once I got rid of my vibrators and I got like a rose quartz wand. And every single time I used it, without fail, like I would have 3 people be like, wow, you're glowing. God, Emily, you're glowing. Emily, you're glowing. And look, like, admittedly, I will get that sometimes in my life. And yes, the meditation helps, but this was like immediate and like many people every single time I used it. And it just felt like it was creating this inner radiance because I was turning myself on and doing it in this like slow burn, gradual way where it was like signaling to nature that I'm willing to prioritize myself, that I'm willing to prioritize it's for pleasure. But for me, honestly, these practices are the main reason why I'm engaging in them is that it feels like the fastest path to God that I've found. It feels like a connection with the divine. And about almost 2 years ago, I met my best friend, Layla Martin, who's like one of the world's greatest Tantra teachers. And she very kindly, she's done many, many ceremonies and facilitations and initiations for me over the last year and a half. And in our first one, she said to me, she said, for tens of thousands of years, ecstasy was seen as a purifying force. For tens of thousands of years, ecstasy was seen and used as a purifying force. And it just blew my mind wide open. I was like, of course, that's the cleanest I ever feel is right after I orgasm.
Right.
And yet what are we taught about it? Oh, that's dirty. That's kinky. That's funky. That's shameful. That's slutty. That's naughty. That's bad. You're so bad. That's so wrong. Ooh, dirty. I mean, it's like, we even use it. We've even reclaimed it as like a turn on, but these words, dirt, shame, naughty, like what? Mm-hmm. And that's why these high priestesses from our past, these basically like religious light workers are now portrayed as whores in our modern like vernacular and the way that we're seeing them. But actually they were more akin to priestesses or priests, like they were doing temple work. And so I just think that if we start to reignite and reintroduce these archetypes into modern, like common vernacular, it's going to give us much more beautiful ways to evolve, because it's like you can't be it if you can't see it, right? And once you understand that these archetypes have been throughout history and they are currently on the planet, it allows us to reframe our own relationship with our sexuality.
So beautifully said. Your throat chakra, my goodness, you can orate like no one else. Like I could just listen to you and I'm like, go on. Yes, please. What else do you have to tell me?
I did my human design and my throat is open.
Yes, 100%.
And I was fascinated about that, because you'd think like, oh, I'm a speaker, I'm a teacher, I'm a writer. I think it would be full, but actually it's the opposite. It's like, no, I'm able to really like get into the state of consciousness of you, and hopefully the listeners, even though it's like not in the same time space, they're in a future time space. But that to me is like one of the fun things to play with, is like, can you preemptively tune into the state of consciousness of the listeners and allow yourself to be a channel for whatever questions, ideas, issues, blocks they're having, which let's just make that our collective prayer right now, that you and I both are able to like tap into the desires, to the questions, to the curiosities, and to the needs of everyone who will listen to this.
I love it. Okay. So I have so many questions.
Let's go.
So many questions. All right. So you mentioned you've gotten rid of all of your vibrators. I love the term wand. I find that it's a much more, like I'm thinking like this is like, what someone might refer to as maybe like a dildo, something like that. I just love the term wand, because I actually say this to my partner, Giovanni, that, he is a wand of light, so that when he, let's say we're together and we're having, we'll say penetrative sex, right? Like sort of heterosexual sex, that I feel like there is like a healing that happens. So I actually love the word wand that you said that. I was like, oh, that's what I call
what
his
a
penis,
gift,
a wand of light.
You share that with him, right? So that he can like embody that himself. Like what a gift.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you got rid of your vibrators because you had this story in your head, or maybe this preconception or belief that the only way that you could climax would be with a tool, let's say, that was like primarily for clitoral stimulation. Mm-hmm. And I've had people on the show, Dr. Lori Mintz, who is out of Florida, who's talked about this idea that we really shame the idea of a clitoral orgasm, that this is actually one of the primary ways that most women, let's say, orgasm. So you're talking about something that I think is blowing the mind of the woman that's listening. Like, oh my gosh, there's something else beyond. Like we're not saying that clitoral orgasms are not.
No, I mean, I'm almost exclusively clitoral orgasmer.
So what does it mean when you say that you have allowed your body time and space, let's say, this expansion to happen, where you're sending this, this energetic signal, and I'm using your words, and you can certainly expand on them as you want, to send this signal that you're giving yourself the time to elevate your frequency, your vibrational capacity, your ability to receive, to be that conduit. Like what does it mean when you are only using, let's say, wands? And please tell me, maybe we'll put, maybe you can share with me where the rose quartz wand is from, because I actually love rose quartz. It's one of my favorites.
I do too, but I will say that Layla is not about rose quartz. Like I personally love mine, and she thinks they're a little dangerous because they can be porous. And so if you don't clean them right away, they can be infected. Also, sometimes they can shatter because they will have striations in them. So she's more of a fan of like jade or glass or onyx, right. Or obsidian even. But I personally love my rose quartz, and I just clean it right afterwards. But really, I mean, the tool is, dare I say, almost irrelevant. I do think there's something to like having a gemstone inside of your womb space, just like in like yoni egg practices. I do think that there is some validity to like clearing out the trauma and the energy of your womb by using like precious gemstones. So there is something to that. But for me, what was the biggest shift was actually the time. right? It's like time is our most valuable resource. And to be honest, I still struggle with this to some degree. But like taking like an hour where I would like take a bath, put on lingerie, like play music, get everything ready. And it's just me, right? It's just me and God. I'm not doing this for someone else. It's not like, oh, well, I have 5 minutes and I'm just feeling like overwhelmed or I'm being distracted by my sexual energy. So I have to go, what my friend, Dr. Kat Meyer says procrastination. So it's not that. It's not like, well, just let me orgasm so I can focus better, or I'm nervous, so let me use this as a state shift. This is actually about sacred time for me and for God. And I will say that this became much more like I was only really willing to prioritize this once I understood the connection between my sexual energy and my creative energy, meaning once I understood like using pleasure practices to call in your desires, to magnetize your desires. So it's like manifesting and then pouring jet fuel on it. And I learned this again from Layla Martin, which was sex magic, which is honestly, I don't love the term sex magic because it's neither sex nor magic, like, because you can do it, meaning it doesn't have to be penetrative sex. It doesn't have to, you could be by yourself, you could be with a partner, you could be in a group. There's many different ways to engage in it. But just Cliff's notes on sex magic, as I was taught by Layla, is that you are holding a vision. Like before you even start any sort of pleasure practice, you hold a vision of something that you would love to create. And this is what I teach in days 13 through 15 of Ziva Online. Like, what would you love right now? And getting crystal clear on that vision, asking yourself all sorts of questions, creating this 5 senses reality. So that part I got down. Great. If you've done Ziva, you know how to do that. And then we take it to the next level where we start to build our life force energy. And life force energy is my word for for sexual charge, right? And here's a practice that I would love to share with everybody right now, like as I talk about sex magic, and also just as like a really valuable tool to take with you. Learning how to detect your level of charge right now. And then checking in if you're with a partner or a group of people, like what's your level of charge? And I recommend doing it as if you're looking at a thermostat. What temperature is in here right now? Oh, it's 74. I'd like it a little warmer. I'm going to turn this dial up a little bit. It's 82. I'd like it a little cooler. I'm going to turn it down. And so with no judgment, with no shame, with no should, with no shouldn't, I shouldn't be this turned on. I should be more turned on. All those stories that we tell ourselves. What if instead we just check, what is my level of charge? 10 being like, whoa, like I'm in full like orgasm state. And 0 being like, is this thing on? Am I a corpse? Like, almost dead. And to be on, and then figuring out like, what's your optimal level of charge throughout your day? For most of us, it's like a 6 or a 7, right? Where you can be engaged, creative, in flow, lit up, but not having to go procrastinate, right? Once you get into 8, 9, 10 territory, then you're like, let me at it. And also like 0, 1, 2, not optimal for vitality, healing, exercise, creativity. So what's my level of charge? Just noticing where you are. And if it's a -2, cool. Be great with the fact that you're a -2. And if you're with a partner, check in with them. What's your level of charge before you've ever started? And then you take any weight, any responsibility, any should or shouldn't off of each other's shoulders, and you just work with what is. Okay, well, you're at an 8 right now, and I'm at a -2. So what's going to be a fun way for us to get into coherence with each other? How are we going to meet each other? Because ultimately, when we're engaging in like 2-person unioning of any sort, we're creating a third thing. Or like, how do we create that third energy body, what we would call the Ka body? So we got to get into coherence.
What does that mean? What does Ka body mean?
Ka body is Ka. And this is actually something that's in the Magdalene manuscripts, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a moment.
We will.
But it is the third thing. So you have your body, there's your partner's body. But then when you're unioning, both physically and energetically, you don't have just your energetic cycles or circuits anymore. And with our body, we have closed energetic circuits. But when you start making love and like your mouths are connecting, your genitals are connecting, your hearts are connecting, your crown chakras are connecting. So that the circuit becomes flowing through the 2 bodies, right? Or however many bodies are there. And so we want to think about the third thing. And if one part of the third thing is vibrating at an 8 and the other part of the third thing is vibrating at a -2, then the circuit is not balanced, it's not completed, right? So we really have to find ways to get into coherence with each other, but that requires being honest about where we are. Right. So with sex magic, back to sex magic, when you start, it's like checking in, right? You hold the vision and then checking in. Where am I right now? I'm at a 4. Great. And just, and then you just breathe a little bit. And could you imagine just going into a 5? Like if you're at a 4, could you imagine what a 5 feels like? Can you remember a time that you were at a 5? Could you just simply take a few breaths into your genitals, a few breaths all the way down into your beautiful pussy, and see if that doesn't just make you feel a little bit more in your body, versus we spend so much time and energy in our heads. And sometimes it's just as simple as a few breaths just to really get present. So then with sex magic, you start to build your life force, you build your sexual energy, you build that charge, and you can, I would honestly recommend starting with manual stimulation, meaning masturbation. I think that is easier than if you start energetically. You can do this work with breath and energy. I just think it's more advanced than manual stimulation.